The school teacher asks her students to create a sentence containing the expression, "I presumed." Becky raises her hand first and says,
"Yesterday, my mother hand-washed the dinner dishes. I presumed that the dishwasher was broken."
"Very good,"
says the teacher. Next, Bobby says,
"This morning, my father left for the office carrying an umbrella. I presumed that it might rain."
"That's excellent,"
says the teacher. Little Johnny gets up and says,
"Yesterday, I saw my grandpa leave the house with a newspaper under his arm, heading behind a bush. I presumed that..."
The teacher interrupts him and says,
"I stopped you because you have no idea what your grandfather was going to do, so you can't presume anything."
Johnny pleads.
"Please, teacher, let me finish my sentence."
The teacher says,
"Very well, you may continue."
"As I was saying,"
continues little Johnny,
"I saw my grandpa heading behind a bush with a newspaper under his arm. I presumed I knew what he was going to be doing because I know he can't read."
A preacher's wife is expecting a baby, so he goes before the congregation and asks for a raise. After much discussion, they agree that whenever the preacher's family expands, so will his paycheck. After 6 children, this starts to get expensive for the church. So the congregation decides to hold another meeting to discuss the preacher's salary. There is much arguing and bickering about how much the clergyman's additional children are costing the church. Finally, the preacher gets up and speaks to the crowd.
"Children are a gift from God,"
he says. Silence falls on the congregation. Then, from the back pew, a little old lady stands up and with her frail voice says,
"Rain is also a gift from God, but when we get too much of it, we wear rubbers."
In Jerusalem, a female journalist hears about a very old Jewish man who has been going to the Wailing Wall to pray twice a day, every day for nearly 80 years. She thinks this is amazing and wants to see it for herself. So she goes to the Wailing Wall, and there he is! She watches him as he prays. Then, as he turns to leave, she approaches him for an interview.
"Sir, how long have you been coming to the wall and praying?"
she asks.
"For about 60 years,
he answers.
60 years? That's amazing! What do you pray for?
She asks. He replies,
"I pray for peace. I pray for all the hatred to stop. And I pray for all our children to grow up in safety and friendship."
How do you feel after doing this for 60 years?
She continues. He thinks for a moment, then replies,
"Like I'm talking to a wall."
A cowboy appeared before St. Peter at the pearly gates.
"Have you ever done anything of particular merit?"
St. Peter asked.
"Well, I can think of one thing,"
the cowboy offered.
"On a trip to the Black Hills out in South Dakota, I came upon a gang of bikers who were threatening a young woman. I directed them to leave her alone, but they wouldn't listen. So I approached the largest and most tattooed biker and smacked him in the face. Kicked his bike over, ripped out his nose ring, and threw it on the ground. Then I yelled, 'Now back off or I'll kick the out of all of you.'"
St. Peter was impressed.
"When did this happen?"
The cowboy replied,
"Couple of minutes ago."
An elderly couple who have just celebrated their 50th anniversary are sitting on their porch relaxing. The wife is knitting and the husband is reading his newspaper. Suddenly, the wife looks at her husband and abruptly whacks him across the head, then goes back to her knitting. Her husband, puzzled, asks,
"What the heck was that for?"
She replies,
"That's for 50 years of bad sex."
Her husband doesn't say a word and just goes back to reading his newspaper. A few minutes later, he looks over at his wife and whacks her across the head. The wife, also puzzled, asks him,
"What was that for?"
Not even looking up from his newspaper, the husband replies,
That's for knowing the difference.
Airman Jones is assigned to the onboarding center where he advises new recruits about their government benefits, especially the GI life insurance policy. It isn't long before Captain Smith notices that Airman Jones has a staggeringly high success rate, selling insurance policies to nearly 100% of the recruits he advised. Curious, the captain stands in the back of the room and listens to Airman Jones' sales pitch. Jones explains the basics of the GI life insurance policy to the new recruits. He then adds, "If you buy this insurance and die in battle, the government will pay $200,000 to your beneficiaries. If you don't have this insurance, the government only has to pay out a maximum of $6,000. Now," he concludes, "think very carefully. Who do you think they're going to send into battle first?" Three biker buddies are sitting in a bar. A man, who's already heavily intoxicated, walks in, sits down, and orders a drink. The man looks around and sees the three bikers sitting at a table in a corner of the bar. He gets up, staggers over to their table, and leans over it. Looking the biggest of the three men in the eye, the drunk man says,
"I went by your grandma's house and saw her completely naked through the window. Man, she's fine."
The biker looks at the drunk man and doesn't say anything. His buddies look confused because people have had their faces kicked in for saying less than that to him in the past. Leaning against the table once more, the drunk man says,
"I slept with your grandma too. She's the best I ever had."
Still, no response is received from the biker. However, his buddies are now starting to get angry. The drunk man continues,
"I'll tell you something else too. Your grandma loved it."
Finally, the biker stands up and says,
You're drunk. Damn it, Grandpa, go home.
After being married for over 25 years, I looked at my wife one day and said, "Honey, 25 years ago, we had a cheap apartment, a cheap car, slept on a sofa bed, and watched a 10-inch black and white TV. But I got to sleep every night with a hot 25-year-old blonde. Now we have a nice house, nice car, big bed, and plasma screen TV, but I'm sleeping with a 50-year-old woman. It seems to me that you're not holding up your side of things." My wife is a very reasonable woman. She told me to go out and find a hot 25-year-old blonde, and she would make sure that I would once again be living in a cheap apartment, driving a cheap car, and sleeping on a sofa bed. Cinderella was now 75 years old. After a fulfilling life with the now passed away prince, she sat happily upon her rocking chair, watching the world go by from her front porch, with a cat named Alan for companionship. One sunny afternoon, out of nowhere, appeared the fairy godmother. Cinderella said,
Fairy godmother, what are you doing here after all these years?
The fairy godmother replied,
Well, Cinderella, as you have lived a good and wholesome life since we last met, I have decided to grant you 3 wishes. Is there anything for which your heart still yearns?
Cinderella was overjoyed, and after some thoughtful consideration, almost under her breath, she uttered her first wish.
I wish I was wealthy beyond comprehension.
Instantly, her rocking chair was turned into solid gold. Cinderella was stunned. Alan, her old faithful cat, jumped off her lap and scampered to the edge of the porch, quivering with fear. Cinderella said,
Oh, thank you, fairy godmother.
The fairy godmother replied,
It's the least I can do. What does your heart desire for your second wish?
Cinderella looked down at her frail body and said,
I wish I were young and full of the beauty of youth again.
At once, her wish became reality, and her beautiful, youthful visage returned. Cinderella felt stirrings inside her that had been dormant for years. and long-forgotten vigor and vitality began to course through her very soul. Then the fairy godmother again spoke.
You have one more wish. What will you have?
Cinderella looked over to the frightened cat in the corner and said,
I wish you to transform Alan, my old cat, into a beautiful and handsome young man.
Magically, Alan suddenly underwent a fundamental change in his biological makeup. That, when complete, he stood before her, a boy so beautiful, the likes of which neither she nor the world had ever seen. The fairy godmother again spoke.
Congratulations, Cinderella. Enjoy your new life.
And with a blazing shock of bright blue electricity, she was gone. For a few eerie moments, Alan and Cinderella looked into each other's eyes. Cinderella sat breathless, gazing at the most stunningly perfect boy she had ever seen. Then, Alan walked over to Cinderella, who sat transfixed in a rocking chair, and held her close in his strong, youthful arms. He leaned in close to her ear, whispered, blowing her golden hair with his warm breath. I bet you regret having me neutered now, don't you? An older woman, well past childbearing years, went to a walk-in clinic where she was seen by a young, new doctor. After about 3 minutes in the exam room, the doctor told her she was pregnant. She burst out the door, screaming as she ran down the hall. An older doctor stopped her and asked her what the problem was, and she told him what had happened. After hearing her out, he sat her down in another exam room and marched back to where the first doctor was. He demanded,
What is the matter with you? That lady is over 70 years old, has 4 grown children and several grandchildren. And you told her she was pregnant?
The young doctor continued to write on his clipboard, and without looking up, he asked, Does she still have the hiccups? The flight attendant realized she didn't have enough meals for all of her passengers. While airborne for less than 30 minutes, she nervously made the following announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so very sorry, but it appears that there has been a terrible error by our airport catering service. I don't know how this has happened, but we have 107 passengers on board, and unfortunately, only 40 dinner meals. I truly apologize for this mistake and inconvenience.
After the passenger muttering died down, she continued.
Anyone who is kind enough to give up their meal so that someone else can eat will receive free, unlimited drinks, alcoholic or otherwise, for the duration of our flight.
Her next announcement came 90 minutes later.
If anyone would like to swap their choice, we still have 40 dinner meals available.
A man was in New York on a business trip and decided to head to a bar for a drink. Standing outside the bar was a nun holding a tin cup. As the man threw a few bucks into her cup, the nun launched into a long tirade about the evils of alcohol. She went on and on about how alcohol was tearing apart the fabric of society, how it was the root of all the city's problems. Slightly annoyed at having to listen to the nun, the man told her,
Listen, sister, I work hard for my money, and sometimes at the end of a long day, I like a drink or two. That doesn't make me a bad person. I have a wife I idolize and 2 wonderful kids at home. I provide for my family, I volunteer my time to several local service clubs, and I contribute regularly to various charities. Yet you stand here and condemn me just because I drank the occasional glass of scotch?
The nun was slightly taken aback and replied,
I see your point, my son, and I apologize if I offended you. But alcohol is such a powerful demon that all who consume it are doomed.
Look, there you go again,
said the man.
How can you make such a sweeping statement? Have you ever even tried alcohol?
Of course not,
gasped the nun.
The evil alcohol has never touched my lips.
The man continued,
Do you really think that 1 glass of booze can change you from a devout nun to some kind of evil degenerate?
Well, I really don't know,
the nun replied.
I'll tell you what,
said the man.
Come into the bar with me and I'll buy you a drink. Just 1 drink. I'll prove to you that evil is not inside the glass, it's inside the person.
Oh, I could never be seen going into such a den of inequity.
replied the nun.
It's out of the question. However, your comment about evil residing in the person rather than the glass is quite intriguing. I must admit, you've aroused a curiosity in me. Well, let's go inside and settle this then,
insisted the man.
No, my son,
said the nun.
I could never enter such a place. But how about this? Take my tin cup with you and fill it with this scotch you mentioned. Bring it out to me and I'll try it.
You're on, said the man. The nun removed all the change and handed him the tin cup. He went into the bar and said to the bartender,
2 scotch on the rocks, and could you put one of them in this tin cup, please?
The bartender sighed and said,
Is that darn nun out there again?